So okay, if I have to buy a smartphone around 40,000, there aren't as many options as you get with smartphones under say 20,000. The only two good options you get is OnePlus 9R and iQOO 7 Legend. So which one is right for you? Well, we asked you guys on a community poll and 63% of you said you wanted to see a comparison with iQOO 7 Legend and OnePlus 9R. So you said it and we'll do it. Ever since the iQOO phones released, I've been using it as my daily driver. iQOO 7 as my daily driver and iQOO 7 Legend as my secondary phone. So again, if you're looking at iQOO 7 Legend and OnePlus 9R, you might also be looking at iQOO 7 because same price range. So the question that has to be asked is, what is the best flagship killer to buy around 40,000 rupees? Well, this is Prateek from TechWiser.com, and to get straight to the point, it's iQOO 7. But hold on right there. There are a lot of things you need to know, and especially the Fun Touch OS. It's gonna be a long ride. Grab something to eat. This is going to be fun. Let's go. Now, before we get into the long-term review, I've used all the three phones for a long time. So here are a few key differences between the iQOO 7, iQOO 7 Legend and OnePlus 9R. Now, as you can see, iQOO 7 Legend is the superior phone with a Snapdragon 888 and extra 13 megapixel telephoto camera. Also, there's a lot of confusion on this. See, all three phones, OnePlus 9R, iQOO 7 and iQOO 7 Legend, have LPDDR5 RAM. With that out, let's move to the build quality. So, the iQOO 7 Legend has an entirely different looking back compared to the iQOO 7. It has those BMW Motorrad colors from their racing cars, and I always wonder, why don't companies collaborate with Jaguar? Made in India, Jaguar is owned by Tata. That would be a fun looking phone. Anyways, the iQOO 7 Legend is a bit thicker than the iQOO 7, like slightly thicker, 8.4mm and 8.7mm. But what's exactly the same in all these devices is the display. The display is 120Hz Full HD AMOLED, and there are 2 points to note out for this display. See, the colors are good on the iQOO phones and I didn't find any problem with the brightness, but there's a slight rainbow effect or pinkish tint when you view the display from an angle. This only happens if there's something bright or white on the display. In comparison, I didn't see this problem on the OnePlus 9R. Now, it doesn't affect watching movies or content on it, but do note the display is a bit inferior than OnePlus 9R. Second, the display is HDR10 certified. It plays HDR video on YouTube. However, you don't get HDR on Netflix. So the iQOO phones are not Netflix HDR certified. On the other hand, OnePlus 9R is Netflix HDR certified. So if you have a top tier Netflix subscription, you can see HDR content on OnePlus 9R and not these two iQOO devices. But these devices are not only for media. These are hardcore gaming performance phones. First, let's take this iQOO 7. Now, it has an extra dual chip inside it. There's some confusion on it. See, the chip only gets activated during gaming, and it does two important tasks. Number one, motion smoothing while gaming. So basically, it picks up your 60 FPS game and makes it 120 FPS. So you get a really good gaming advantage in shooting games. As of now, it only works on Call of Duty and Genshin Impact, as I can see. But we'll get to this motion smoothing part in just a bit. Second is HDR. Well, HDR slightly boosts the color during gaming, and I would say, nah. Now, I wanted to test whether iQOO 7 really is capable of pushing 120 FPS Call of Duty in high graphics. So I gamed for about 30 minutes, and here is PerfDog that tells you the average FPS your phone gives during gaming, and it's constantly around 60 FPS. It should have been 120, but it's 60 FPS. As you can see, the screen refresh rate goes 120 Hz, but the FPS still stays at 60. Same with Genshin Impact as well. So we have reached out to iQOO and we'll get more clarity once they reply back. We'll update the description accordingly. Stay tuned for that. But as of now, don't buy the iQOO 7 for the dual chip, as it barely makes a difference. I also did the same test with OnePlus 9R and iQOO 7 Legend, and the FPS is around 60. So all three phones are more or less same when it comes to gaming. You get 60 FPS in most of the heavy games. Also, there's a 4D vibration motor in iQOO 7, which is good to have. It makes the game more lively by vibrating slightly. And there's also stereo speakers in all these three phones. Speakers are not bad, not great, average. And in terms of storage, speed and CPU power, well, here I did a 2 GB file render on KineMaster and the iQOO 7 Legend beats both the phones. Obviously, 888 is better than 870 and the other two finished second. But the decision between these three phones get really clear when you talk about the camera. So all these three phones come with a 48 megapixel camera, the sensor on OnePlus and iQOO series is different, and the iQOO 7 Legend has an extra 13 megapixel 2x telephoto camera. First, two important things to note here. iQOO phones, just like Vivo phones, have a bit of saturated and vibrant colors. Like as you can see, the yellow and red pops in the image. Second, OnePlus has a cooler white balance and at times a pinkish tint on the images, whereas iQOO phones are consistently warm and have consistent colors. The only problem I had with OnePlus 9R is when it randomly just gives a pinkish tint to the images like this one. And due to this, colors and especially human faces look weird. Same is the case with portrait and selfies. The OnePlus 9R had this pinkish tint to the images whenever there's white or human face in it. Also, OnePlus 9R cannot do night mode for selfies, whereas the iQOO phones can. Surprisingly, the wide-angle camera on OnePlus 9R didn't have this pinkish tint problem. There's a macro camera as well, but since the iQOO phones are using the 13 megapixel wide-angle camera for macro, the images are comparatively sharper. Now coming to videos, all of them can shoot 4K 60 FPS and have OIS. Interestingly, OnePlus 9R can do OIS even in 4K 60 FPS, whereas in iQOO phones, you'll have to switch to 4K 30 FPS to get OIS. So if I had to pick, I would pick up the iQOO phones for the camera and correct colors. I don't want to edit every image in Lightroom and correct the white balance with the OnePlus 9R. The only weak part of these iQOO phones is software. All the three phones come with Android 11 right out of the box. Now both Oxygen OS and FunTouch OS kill apps, that's there. But here's the major difference. You get notifications and annoying recommendations in the iQOO phones. Like if you just go here and simply search for apps in the search bar, you see right here. And Vivo's V App Store keeps on sending notifications every now and then. You also have hot apps and hot games. Of course, you can turn all that off in settings, but it shouldn't have been there in the first place. Again, FunTouch OS does come with a lot of handy features like this one. I use a lot when your phone is turned off. You can long press the volume button to turn on the flashlight. This is so helpful. And if you explore in the settings, there are a lot of gestures and quick shortcuts, but most of them aren't polished. Like this shake to turn on the flashlight, it works 5 out of 10 times, 50%. So FunTouch OS has gotten better, way better from the past, but it is still not as good as Oxygen OS. And if you have an iQOO 7 Legend, you can get right now Android 12 Beta 1. That's not possible on OnePlus 9R. So as of now, the update situation on iQOO phones seem to be better or at least equal to OnePlus. Moving on, in terms of battery, as you can see, all the three phones have more or less the same battery. So if you're like a medium heavy user like me, it would last a day with 6 to 7 hours of screen on time. All of the three phones have 65-66 watt fast charging. They do charge really fast. So in terms of battery and charging, I would say all the three phones are equal. No wireless charging, no IP certification. To end it, all three phones have carrier aggregation, NFC, Wi-Fi 6, compass and all other sensors. All the three phones support only one 5G band, N78, so that's on par. But finally, which phone should you buy? Which is the new flagship killer to look for? Well, see, if you give me 40,000 rupees and say, Pratik, go out, buy a phone, I would return 8,000 to you and get an iQOO 7. It's the most value for money with a good camera, dual chip and really good performance. But again, if you tell me no Pratik, you have to buy a phone for 40,000, then I'll ask 3,000, 4,000 more from you and get a S20 FE 5G. Better software, faster updates, wireless charging, IP67 rating and definitely better camera than OnePlus 9R. But if you're not giving me any extra money, I have to strictly be at 4,000, then OnePlus 9R it is. I wouldn't spend that money on iQOO 7 Legend. You only get Snapdragon 888 and that extra 13 megapixel telephoto camera. I wouldn't spend an extra 8K on that. I hope the choices are clear. Do comment if you have any questions. I'll be replying to all of them for the first 1 hour. So it's me Pratik signing off. See ya pretty soon.